Let's continue on with part 2 of my overview of the CS 5254 course on concurrent object-oriented and functional programming in summer of 2023. In this part of the lesson, we'll describe the assignments and the assessments of the assignments. Programming assignments should be written using Java 11 and Android Studio. You can use any IDE you want, but your final submission must build and run with the latest version of Android Studio, as well as Android 13, which is Tiramisu, which is API level 33. When you use Android Studio, you'll see it provides all kinds of interesting capabilities to make it easier to develop and debug and deploy Android apps, including a wizard for creating new apps, which we're not really going to use because we'll give you the skeletons, a visual editor for creating GUIs, which we're also not going to use because we're going to give you that part, an editor for manipulating Android XML descriptors needed for your app, which we'll also give you, an emulator for testing your apps on your PC, which we will have you use throughout the course, as well as a debugger for finding errors in the emulator and/or on an actual Android device if you happen to want to use your Android device and it runs the right version of Android. As we have mentioned before, please install Android 13, which is the Tiramisu version recently released. It's known as API level 33. All the source code for the assignments and the examples will be available in my GitHub repository. You can find information about this at my GitHub account here at the link at the bottom of the slides. You'll need to learn how to use GitHub. We'll talk about how to set up GitHub shortly and use it, as well as GitLab. So you'll be using GitLab to store your repositories because it's private by default, which is important for privacy reasons to avoid copying and plagiarism. But you'll be getting the code from my GitHub account because that's open by default, public by default. Be prepared to update your GitLab repository periodically. You'll need to understand how Git works. You'll certainly need to do that when I put out new versions of the assignments. And every once in a while, I'll have to put new versions of tests or fix a bug in the skeletons and whatnot. So you need to understand how to use Git. Fortunately, Git is very common, very popular these days, so you probably already know how to use it from other things that you're doing. The assignments that we'll be doing in this course will be designed to provide you with a range of experience with Java 11, as well as Android concurrent programming. And you'll see here that you'll be implementing multiple variants of a Java concurrent resource manager and an associated Android app. And these implementations will do a bunch of interesting things. They'll give you experience using Java threads and runnables. They'll give you experience using Java's executor framework, such as the executor service, executor completion service, and fork join pool. And they'll also give you experience with Java semaphores, built-in monitor objects, stamped locks, reentrant locks, concurrent hash maps, and so on. The topics we're covering here generalize to much, much more than just Android, although that will be the primary focal point of many of the assignments. We may also have some assignments that demonstrate how to access microservice-based resources that would run in other processes, just to give you a little bit more experience with the way that most people are building and deploying mobile cloud computing platforms these days and mobile cloud computing systems these days. And the particular example is really fun. It uses some examples and some symbols from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy involving beings from Middle-earth gazing into Palantiri. So if you don't know much about Tolkien, you'll get to know all about Palantiri and Middle-earth beings by the time you're done. The assessments of the programming assignments that you submit will be done by course staff that will be doing the reviews. That is largely me. And a couple things you absolutely need to make sure you do. You need to submit your assignments on time. Every semester, we have a couple people who don't follow along. They submit things late, and it causes all kinds of trouble. So take a look at the course frequently asked questions file and see what the consequences are of missing deadlines. Missing deadlines is really, really, really a problem, and you'll typically not do well in this course if you miss deadlines. A couple other things. Your initial submission must compile and be largely complete, or I'm not going to review it. The way that the programming assignments work is you submit the programming assignments to me for an initial review. I review your assignments. I give you feedback. I publish a video that explains what the common problems I saw. They're frequently made mistakes, as I know them, refer to them. And then you get a chance to revise your program. You then resubmit your program for the final grade. So you get a couple of chances to do it right. But you have to make sure that you pay the price for this extra scrutiny and extra feedback, which is getting things to work by the time you submit them initially. If you submit just junk, you're not going to get a review, you're not going to get a grade. Likewise, you also have to make sure that you run the regression tests that we provide and push a screenshot of the results to GitLab. And this is also very important. I need to be able to see at a glance whether your tests are working or not, and that gives me insights as far as where I need to focus parts of my review in order to give you most effective feedback. You should strive to get most of the tests to pass by the time you submit your initial assignment. If very few of them pass, then I'm sorry, I'm not going to review that. Another important thing, your work must be your own, and this applies both for exams and for programming assignments. We have an honor code at Vanderbilt. You need to make sure that you do your own work and don't have someone else do the work for you. And that will include AI tools like ChatGPT, although you can use them as ways we'll talk about in class. The bulk of your grade will be based on the results of automated unit tests. These tests come with the assignments, and they are very extensive, not perfect, but they certainly will catch a lot of the common problems you might make as a mistake and will kind of serve as a surrogate for coming and asking me every time you have a problem. Although you're certainly welcome to come to office hours and ask questions and post them on Piazza if you have issues. It's very, very important that your current assignment, in other words, whatever you're working on at the moment, also passes all the tests for the previous assignments. All the grading is cumulative. And please see item number 19 in the course frequently asked questions page to understand the way we do this. This is really intended to mimic the way the real world works, where you have to make sure you maintain older revisions of things as stuff marches onwards. And it also allows us to be able to improve the tests that we run in order to catch more of the common, frequently made mistakes that people do. Every semester, someone comes along and surprises us with creative ways of making things not work. And so we're always looking for new ways to improve the unit tests and the regression tests we have. The relative weighting of each portion of the course is as follows. The exams are roughly 45%. The programming projects are 40%. The final exam, if we have one, will be worth 10%. And then there's a 5% participation score. Notice I use the word quizzes here. That should be monthly exams. These weightings may change depending on various factors. For example, if we don't have a final exam, that'll get split between the quizzes or the exams rather and the programming project. What is participation? Participation means attending class, the live sessions, being involved in class, and following directions, making sure that you do things on time and make sure that you push your code, you fill out the Google submission form, we'll talk about that, making sure that you also will make sure your code is working, running the unit tests, providing a snapshot or a screenshot of the results of the test, and so on. If you don't do this, if you don't show up, then it's going to affect your grade accordingly as per the descriptions here. And in general, make sure you participate. That's the beauty of having live sessions. That's one of the reasons we do this at Vanderbilt, is not just have a completely online experience where you're never going to talk to any human, but instead coming and being involved and asking questions and learning things and making sure you go the extra mile to really understand how the technologies work and the assignments are designed and the feedback and everything like that. So that's the end of part 2 of the overview of the CS 5254 course.